Hello and welcome. In this week's video, taking a look at these two lenses. First, the 24-70, arguably one of the more popular focal range lenses available on the market, and the newer 20-70 that Sony put out a couple months ago. Been shooting with both of these lenses for quite some time now. Let's take a closer look. My name is Cree, and on this channel I talk about tech with context. And I've been using the 24-70mm Sigma lens for quite some time now, but recently I added the 20-70mm to my arsenal, and I just want to go over the reasons why I did this, also some pros and cons of both, and just to set expectations, I'm not going to be comparing a Sigma lens with a Sony lens necessarily, but I'd like to speak with you a little bit more about aperture and why, a 2.8 aperture lens is different than a 4.0 aperture lens, what this means, what it looks like, and why you should maybe consider purchasing f4 lenses over f2.8 or lenses with a larger size aperture that gives you that blurry background, why you might want to consider purchasing the 4 instead. So first of all, with these two lenses, you can see that there is a big size difference. The Sigma 24-70 is over here on the right hand side, and then we have the Sigma 20-70mm over on the left hand side right here. Now, the reason why I was so excited about the 20-70, first of all, it gives me more of a focal range to work with. Also the size, it's much smaller than the 24-70. And although I am showing you the Sigma lens, I'm pretty sure that the Sony version of this lens is comparable. And the reason why the 24-70 is larger in size is because it has that lower aperture. Now, just to go over aperture very quickly, there are 3 types of settings that you really want to pay attention to while you're shooting video. One's aperture, ISO, and then also shutter speed. Now, I'm just going to cover aperture today because aperture is tied to lenses, while ISO and shutter speed are tied to your camera body and what those settings can be adjusted to while you're filming. But for aperture, this is the number that you really want to look out for when you're considering purchasing lenses. So when it comes to aperture, the lower the f-stop number on your lens, the blurrier you can make your background. So the f2.8 lens in this case is going to theoretically give you a blurrier background than the f4. But keep in mind that different shooting situations cause for different f-stops. So for instance, if I'm indoors and I can control my lighting, I can turn the aperture down, or I can make my aperture as wide as possible. And that's how you're letting in more light and you're able to create that blurry background. But if I'm shooting outdoors and I'm not even using the f2.8, then you may want to consider going to the f4. I am going to give some samples of what that background looks like. In fact, right now I'm shooting on a lens that will go as low as f1.4, and you can see how blurry this background is. But if I'm shooting outdoors and I'm shooting a subject and I want the audience to see the background, I don't want it to be blurry, then I'm going to turn that f-stop up, or that aperture up. And in this case, if I don't see myself ever going below a 4.0, then I would choose the 4.0 lens. So I know I'm kind of getting into the weeds a little bit here, but I want to show you the difference because when it comes to shooting your videos and you're out there selecting lenses and choosing lenses, the lenses with a lower aperture are going to be more expensive. And they're also going to be bigger and larger in size. And, the lenses that are f4 give a nice clear image as well. They do give a little bit of a blurry background. They're smaller in size and they tend to be less expensive. So before you go out and make a decision about the lens you're going to purchase, kind of think about the environment that you're going to be shooting in. I own a video production company, so there are many times when I want a blurry background, and that's appropriate, but there are other times when I'm shooting outdoors, or I'm vlogging, or there are cases where I don't necessarily need the background to be blurry. Then I have lenses that are able to keep everything in focus. And that is really the key when it comes to making a purchasing decision. Now, why am I excited about the 20mm range on this lens right here and why I decided to buy this lens? Well, first of all, I love the 20mm focal length. I've owned the Sony 20mm for quite some time now. I have it on my camera in most situations. I actually prefer it better than like a 16mm type of a focal length when it comes to shooting most things, unless I'm shooting real estate or something like that. Even when I'm traveling, I found that the 20mm focal length is wide enough to capture whatever it is that I want to capture during that video. And then also if I'm vlogging, the background doesn't need to be blurry if I'm vlogging. In fact, if I'm vlogging, I probably want the audience to see where I am and what's going on behind me. It's only those situations where you want that cinematic look is that you may want to consider getting that lower f-stop. So the 24-70, it's only going as wide as 24mm. So I am getting that extra 4mm of focal length, and I know that doesn't seem like much, but it really is in terms of capturing video. So that's kind of my thought process behind these two lenses. What we'll do now is I'll put each of these lenses on the camera so you can see what that blurry background looks like and if it even makes a difference. All right, this is the Sigma 24-70. Right now I'm at 24mm. The lens that I was just using was also 24mm. However, it had an f1.4 aperture, which means that it should have had a blurrier background than what you're seeing right here. So this is a 2.8 aperture lens, and you can see it's still giving me that blurry background. This is what people love. They love that look and feel. Now, would this be a good vlogging lens? Probably not. But when I am shooting clients or I'm in interviews or anything like that, this is a nice zoom lens to have where I can go all the way out to 70mm. It's going to give me that f2.8 the entire time, so it doesn't change aperture depending on where you are with the lens, and you can see it does give you that nice blurry background. So let's go ahead and just zoom in a little bit. I'm going to apologize in advance. This is going to get really close to my face, but when you're zooming in, do you notice how the more you zoom in, the blurry the background gets? It's just the compression that is created with the lens. And this is what I really want you to pay attention to when we look at the 20-70. So we're zoomed in right now. Let's just go all the way in. So you can see we're at 70, and you can see right here that that background is really, really blurry. So sorry about that lens shake there. But you can see that if you do want that blurry background, I can set this lens at f2.8. Now, if I increase the f-stop on this, I'm gonna lose the blurry background. And that means that I can choose to take that blurry background and look away, but the f2.8 is there if I need it. So let's go ahead and switch over to the f4. All right, this is the 20-70mm f4, and you can see I'm the same distance away that I was with the 24mm focal length, but look how wide this focal length is now. You have much more space. This is much closer to that 16mm feel, not quite that wide, but it still gives you the same feeling that you're actually sitting there with the person while you're speaking to them. Also, if I want to get a nice wide shot, I think the 20mm is really nice. Now, let's look at this background. You can see it is a little bit blurry. I have this lens set at f4.0, and we do get a little bit of blurriness here. And I'm going to do exactly what I did with the last lens. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. And let's go all the way in. You see what's happening here? This is an f4 lens, and I can still get that blurry background out of this lens. Let's go ahead and let's go all the way to 70. And you can see that compression creates that nice blurry background. So why is that important? First of all, with an f4 lens, you're going to save money. With an f4 lens, it's going to be smaller in size, it's going to be lighter. So if you are interested in having a lens that can travel nicely, or it doesn't take up a bunch of space or weight in your camera bag, then I would suggest considering an f4. Now, when you zoom in, you're going to be able to take advantage of the compression that is just built into any lens. This can be any type of zoom or telephoto lens. The more you zoom in, the blurrier that background is going to get. So even if you go ahead and go with an f4 lens, what's going to happen is if you want to blur your background, just move the camera back, zoom in more, frame whatever your shot is, and you can get a blurry background that I think is comparable to the F2.8. And you're going to save a lot of money in doing so. So going with this lens, you're going to get a wider focal length. So you're going to be able to go all the way out to 20 millimeters. You do have the f4, but as you can see, I don't know that there's much of a difference when it comes to having a blurry background. So when it comes to making a purchasing decision like this one, I think it's important to talk about low light. You know, with the F2.8, you can go all the way down and take advantage of allowing more light to come into your camera onto the sensor, and that is advantageous when it comes to low light filming. But I will say, even with the F4 in low light situations, I'm shooting with an A7S III from Sony, and I can turn the ISO up high enough in the camera body to make it so that this lens will work great in low light situations. Now, is it better than the F2.8 or even an F1.4? Maybe not, but I can still get the shot that I want in low light situations. And look, if I feel like I'm going to be in a super dark environment, I'm not going to take this lens. I'll take a different one. But for everyday filming, and if you're looking for a cinematic look, or if you're looking to be able to showcase and highlight the background in your environment, in addition to whoever's on camera, then I highly suggest that you check out 4.0 lenses. This goes for the 70-200, even lower. I have the 24-105, which is also an f4. I use that all the time. It's an image stabilized lens. But this is just a quick demonstration of, you know, when you're choosing lenses, think about where you're filming, and then take that information and choose the lens that's best for you, and don't discount or rule out the f4s. I think they're excellent lenses, and I'm loving this one so far. So that's it for this week's video. If you like what you saw, hit the thumbs up and subscribe down below. And thanks always for tuning in. I'll see you again in next week's video.